Welcome to the PastGlimpse Photos channel.
Subscribe to the channel and like the video.
This is such a powerful photo. It was taken in April 1945 by Major Clarence Benjamin and shows a train of Jewish prisoners that had been intercepted by Allied forces. This is the moment they learned that the train would not be heading to a concentration camp, and they had been liberated.
A nose-shaping device for women, 1944.
Iron lung. By the 1950s, polio had become one of the most serious infectious diseases among children in the United States. In the paralytic form of the disease, the polio virus attacks the motor cells of the spinal cord, which are responsible for the functioning of the diaphragm, causing the patient to suffocate. The principle of operation is based on changes in pressure inside the chamber, which causes the patient's chest to expand and contract, simulating natural breathing. These devices were widely used in the mid-20th century, but were later replaced by more modern artificial lung ventilation devices.
The Blue Tattoo. Olive Oatman was a 13-year-old Mormon pioneer who traveled west toward Zion in 1851. On her way, she was captured by Yavapai Indians who murdered her family and made her their slave. She lived as a slave for a year before being traded to the Mojave, who tattooed her face and raised her as their own. Even though she was happy among the Mojaves, at 19 she was ransomed back to white society. She became instantly famous, but the price of fame was high, and the pain of her ruptured childhood lasted a lifetime.
The Montparnasse train derailment occurred in Paris on October 22, 1895. It was caused by excessive speed and inadequate braking on train number 56, which caused the locomotive to crash through the station wall and fall into the street, killing one person and injuring several others.
Sapper training. The soldiers were asked to defuse an explosive device blindly so they could work at night. Great Britain, 1940s.
A freed prisoner picks up a pair of glasses from a pile collected from other prisoners. The photograph symbolizes the tragedy of the Holocaust and the systematic crimes of the Nazis, when the belongings of the dead and prisoners were confiscated and stored. Defense of the Pioneers. Leningrad, 1937. A column of Soviet pioneers wearing gas masks during a civil defense exercise. The photo became a symbol of an era when fear of war and chemical attacks was so strong that even children's organizations prepared for possible combat situations.
Monk training. Shaolin, 1970s. These exercises develop endurance, balance, strength, and complete body control, part of an ancient monastic discipline that combines martial arts and spiritual practice.
A young woman from the Women's Royal Army Corps fainted from the heat during a meeting with Princess Elizabeth. Shrewsbury, England, July 6, 1949.
A Frenchman lights Winston Churchill's cigarette, 1944. The first test of the electric chair on a death row inmate. USA, 1956.
April 11th, 1909. About 100 people draw lots to equally divide 12 acres of purchased sand dunes. This site would later become Tel Aviv. Dr. Benedict's apparatus for measuring metabolism, 1935. Hooves tied to a moonshiner's shoes to disguise his tracks during Prohibition in the United States, 1924.
Reporters watch a nuclear explosion during Operation Plumbob, June 24, 1957.
Construction of the Hindenburg airship, 1932.
Delivering bread during the Irish Civil War, 1920s.
A daring escape from East Berlin.
On May 5, 1963, Austrian lathe operator Heinz Meixner drove up to the border checkpoint in an Austin Healey convertible with its windshield removed. He hid his girlfriend, Marguerite Churau, who had been denied exit visas by East German authorities, in the back seat, and her mother in the trunk.
A vintage black and white postcard from the early 20th century depicts a man wearing a baseball uniform with the word citizen written on it, holding a bat. The article describes him as the largest baseball player in the world, weighing approximately 450 pounds, and a member of the Emporium, Pennsylvania team. Such cards were issued back then as sports memorabilia and curiosities.
An old photograph from the early 20th century. Two uniformed soldiers wearing bulky hearing horns on their heads. Such devices were used before the advent of radar to detect approaching aircraft or artillery in advance. William Harley and Arthur Davidson, founders of Harley-Davidson, on their motorcycles in 1914.
Photo from around 1905, Government Square in Cincinnati, Ohio. A wide street with streetcars, pedestrians, and grand buildings reflects the urban look of early 20th century America.
A 1961 photo from Cuenca, Spain. A child sits in a wooden box, which serves as a simple playpen for safety. Such homemade wooden enclosures were often used in villages at the time to keep children safe while adults worked. The photo captures the atmosphere of rural life in the mid-20th century.
An old photo from the early 20th century. Several men on long ladders cleaning the windows of a two-story building with a cart full of tools below. The image captures a typical street scene of window cleaners at work at the time, before the advent of modern lifts and specialized equipment.
The photo shows Nazi concentration camp prisoners in striped uniforms performing heavy excavation work. Such scenes reflect the brutal conditions of forced labor during World War II. Exhausting labor is one of the symbols of the suffering of Holocaust victims.
The photo was taken in Washington, D.C. around 1913. In the center is a traffic cop under an umbrella, as traffic lights did not yet exist. In the foreground is an early automobile, followed by a streetcar with the sign Union Station, emphasizing the transitional period. Streetcars, automobiles, and horse-drawn vehicles coexisted on the streets. The buildings in the background reflect the architecture of downtown Washington. The photograph captures an important stage, the development of the modern urban traffic system, where such traffic controllers became the prototype for the first traffic lights.
A photo from the early 20th century shows a police motorcycle with a trailer in the form of a lattice cage for detainees, a kind of mobile prison or transportation of arrested persons directly from the place of detention. A German plane crashed into a building in France, leaving its remains protruding from the facade. The scene symbolizes the fighting and consequences of air raids during the occupation. In this photo, camera operators are recording a lion for the famous Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer logo. The photo depicts women weavers working on factory looms from the early 20th century. The scene reflects the era of industrialization, when women's labor was widely used in the textile industry. A photo from World War I shows a female worker at a munitions factory preparing large-caliber artillery shells. The scene symbolizes women's participation in home front labor and their contribution to war production. The Dongan Hills Ferry in New York City, 1945. People are separated by deck. Women on the left, men on the right. The scene reflects the peculiarities of public transportation and social norms of the mid-20th century. A mid-20th century photo shows a very tall man next to ordinary people and children. The image illustrates a rare case of gigantism caused by a growth hormone disorder. A World War II-era photo shows a newspaper kiosk in the Warsaw Ghetto. A boy sells a Jewish newspaper, Gazeta Żydowska, published under the control of the occupying authorities. The photograph captures everyday life and propaganda under Nazi occupation. The photo from the early 20th century shows a boy asleep at his factory workstation. The scene reflects the harsh conditions of child labor during industrialization, when children often worked 10 to 12 hours a day. American soldiers say goodbye to a woman before heading off to the front. The scene symbolizes the emotions and drama of partings during mobilization. The photo shows early 20th century Naples, Italy. Narrow houses with balconies and laundry hanging out to dry. Carts and residents line the streets. The scene reflects everyday life in the densely populated neighborhoods of this southern Italian city. A photo from the 1920s in St. Petersburg shows a giant chess game on Palace Square, with the pieces represented by people and riders on horseback. The scene symbolizes the mass cultural events of the early Soviet era. A shaving machine capable of servicing a dozen men simultaneously. Photo taken in 1960. Such devices were part of futuristic ideas for automating everyday life, but in reality, they never entered mass use, remaining more of a curiosity or a demonstration of technological fantasy.
This photo is from 1941. Due to a shortage of nylon, which was used to make parachutes and other military materials during World War II, women painted stockings on their legs using paint to simulate seams. It was a compromise between military necessity and the desire to remain feminine in difficult times.
Le Père Fouettard is a character in French folklore who accompanies Saint Nicholas. Unlike the good saint, he punishes naughty children with rods or carries them away in a basket.
This historic photo was taken in Gordonton, North Carolina, in July 1939. It depicts a roadside store with people sitting around it after a Sunday lunch. The atmosphere evokes the spirit of rural America of that era. Old advertising signs, a gas station, and a wooden porch that became a social gathering place.
This photo was taken in 1957. Boys listening to records in a store through headphones. A shoemaker at work in his small street workshop, surrounded by handmade and repaired shoes.
Pictured is a height-stretching device, 1931. Such innovative devices were advertised at the time as a way to correct posture, relieve neck pain, and even increase height. Today, such methods are considered unsafe and are more reminiscent of quaint artifacts from the history of medicine and physical education.
50s-inspired beachwear, when stripes were all the rage and every pose was graceful. A fun shot of swimsuits before the bikini hit the scene.
Construction workers on the Forth Road Bridge, Scotland, 1961. No safety nets, no harnesses, just nerves of steel and a steady grip.
A female train conductor signaling departure with a flag, 1920s-30s. Women increasingly took on such roles in the railway industry between the wars.
Engineers working on ENIAC in 1946, one of the world's first electronic computers. It occupied an entire room and was powered by nearly 18,000 vacuum tubes.